Hello, and welcome to the next episode of the Mourning Brew, with me, your host, Lee Petcher. Be advised that this podcast deals with issues of the passing of a loved one and the dealing with grief. So if these issues are upsetting to you at the moment, please come back to us when you feel ready to do so. Remember, you are not on your own. Otherwise, pour yourself a brew, get comfy, and we'll begin. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Mourning Brew. How are you all doing? I hope that you're all well, safe and happy. And if you're not, check in with yourself and find out what it is that you're feeling. Please don't feel these feelings alone. You're not alone. If you need to reach out and talk to someone, please do. Remember, I'm always here at The Mourning Brew on Instagram and Twitter, themourningbrew@gmail.com on email. Just reach out. As I'm recording this, we are now well and truly into December and Christmas is just around the corner. Yes, this is a time for joy and merriment, and I wish this upon all of you listening. But please take the time out to think about those who are struggling at this time of year, especially this year. We've lost so many people, and it's not only just down to COVID, but cancer, old age, a number of health reasons, murder, even suicide. So if you know anyone who struggles at this time of year or who may be struggling now at this time of year, please just reach out and check in on them. The best gift you can give to anybody this festive season, or any time at all really, is time. And just really be there for that person in the moment. I know it's going to be strange this year because we can't be around each other and give each other hugs and things like that, but there is still a way to connect to your family and to your friends, whether that's social media, a quick text message, a WhatsApp, a call, a FaceTime, Zoom, whatever. Remember, this is not a time for receiving. I mean, let's face it, it's always nice to receive nice gifts and presents. I'm not going to lie, but now's the time for giving. And being truly there for someone is also known as being present for them. So that's the best present you can give, is your presence. This is episode 7 of the Mourning Brew, and it's the last episode that I'm going to release this year. I'm going to take some time off for Christmas and the New Year because, as you all know, this is a particularly hard time for me. It's hard anyway with my dad not being here, but the fact that I lost my mum on New Year's Eve as well. I'm just going to take some time off and follow my own advice and take some time for me and be there for my loved ones and my friends and my family and just fill up my own tank so that I can come back again next year fully loaded and ready to dive into the future episodes. And with that in mind, as I said, this is episode 7. I wanted to do something special because, as you know, 7 is a big number for me. I'm the youngest of 7. My dad is the eldest of 7. My mum is the youngest of 7. So I wanted to do something very special for all my brewers out there. That's what I've coined you now, my brewers. I didn't want to just bring on a guest just to have to take a break and then come back on with guests. So I was thinking of something extra special that I could do for you. Now, whilst I was thinking, a good friend of mine and a fellow podcaster, Mr. Tony Rossi, shout out to you, he has recently released the episode where he interviewed me. If you go back to episode 2 of The Mourning Brew, I mentioned that Tony had interviewed me for his own podcast, Actor Problems. And I've reached out to him and he has kindly given me permission to play his episode out here for all my listeners. So we're going to jump into that now. In this podcast, we talk about my other podcast that I do with my fiance, the Plant-Based Performers Podcast. We go into how therapy is still a stigma in the UK and it is over in the US and how we want to change that. We break down, again, all my experiences with grief and how my perspective with grief has helped me see the positives of 2020. Now, guys, this is a long interview, so I'm not going to bore you any further. We're going to get straight into it. So please make sure you have your brews ready, you're comfy, and let's settle into the first time ever I was interviewed on somebody else's podcast. Take it away, Tony.
This is the Actor Problems Podcast, a self-care podcast for actors. Let's go get 'em. You're an actor because you love it, because it's fun, because you can't not do it, but you ever wondered why we're all so damn stressed? My name's Tony Rossi. I'm an actor in Chicago and a mindset coach and guest expert for Backstage, helping actors see things differently with the things that make them stressed. We do not have to suffer our way to the top. So let's get to it. Hashtag not perfect. Let's go get 'em. My friends, welcome back. We're going to keep this intro short today. We got a very heavy topic, and I brought on the best person I know who can speak to this. And with there being so much death, with there being so much loss, with there being so much mourning, and so many reasons to just quit on 2020, I wanted to bring in my friend Lee Petcher, who I'm going to introduce in just a moment. Friends, there's a couple of things I want you to do before you listen to this episode. Number one, I want you to check in with yourself right now. How am I feeling right now, and what do I need? What did I come to this podcast for? If you're a regular listener, you're used to a certain tone, a certain vibe, and on this one, we don't quite have that same vibe. We talk about a bunch of really, really heavy stuff. We go deep. We go really deep. And while everybody handles that differently, we also handle that differently given the day. And for today, I want you to check in with yourself right now. Well, how am I feeling and what do I need? Then I'm going to give you another invitation about 20 to 30 minutes into this, asking you to check in with yourself again. How am I feeling now? Is this like, because sometimes we're listening to content and it puts us in this weird place and we don't even realize it. If you're paying attention to stuff that's going on in the world, that's going to happen a lot. So this is a great opportunity to flex those muscles of checking in with yourself. And finally, know you can listen to this in chunks, or you can just skip this one altogether if you don't want to hear about death for a while. But I do invite you at some point to listen to the tail end, where we talk about ways to, as Lee puts it, laugh and cry at the same time. We're allowed to laugh and cry. And he shares some stories about how he made his mother's funeral a little more lighthearted than your traditional one. And I think you're going to get some great takeaways. Let me introduce to you our special guest for today. Lee Petch is an actor, videographer, editor, and micro-content creator and admin for the Act on This TV network over in the UK, run by Mr. Ross Grant, former guest on the Actor Problems podcast. And Lee also runs his own self-tape business for actors, That Self-Tape Guy, plus is now the host of 2 podcasts, one of which you're going to learn more about today, called The Mourning Brew, that's Mourning with a U, as well as the podcast he co-hosts with his girlfriend Emma, the Plant-Based Performers podcast. It is my pleasure and my honor to introduce to you my friend, Lee Petcher. Petch, I gotta start by saying you're gonna be disappointed in me.
Oh, why?
Because we've been talking about one of your 2 podcasts, the other of which we're going to dive into here. But you and your girlfriend Emma are creating a vegan podcast.
That's correct, yeah.
And educating people like myself who don't know anything about vegans. I don't know if I'm your target audience or not, but I'm going to be listening.
Do you know what? You're like the perfect target audience.
Oh, I am. Okay.
Yeah, like we
don't do things perfectly here, Petch.
No, it's cool. Like, I'm not perfect at all. I want people to, like, if you're vegan or plant-based, as we like to call it, because veganism is such a strong word, people are very, very angry about that word. It's like, oh, you eat honey, you're not vegan. You fly on a plane, you're not a vegan. You know, so it comes in various, like,
so plant-based.
It can be quite, yeah. So we call it plant-based, and we want people to who are struggling in the performing arts, like we were going on tour and things like that, and we'd go to hotels and they were like, "Oh, have you got anything like that's not meat?" And they'd just bring you a plate of cheese. And I was like, "Well, not cheese either." And like, oh. Like, well, no, we're plant-based. So for people like that who want to know how to circumnavigate that kind of part of their careers, perfect for them. But for people like yourself who aren't plant-based, it's like, come and learn about it. Come and educate yourself about what's going on, and maybe you'll go meatless Monday. Maybe 2 days a week you'll not eat dairy. Do you know what I mean? And it's helps.
I'm already on track for that, as we've kind of talked about. I haven't told you I'm pretty much dairy free. Pretty much. Cool. No, so here's why you're going to be disappointed though. I just ate chicken for the first time honestly for the first time since like January 2020, like first time in a long time. Why did I? Number one, because I wanted to see what would happen. Okay. I wanted to be like, okay, how's my body going to react to this? And number two, because I got sick of eating salmon every night, and I love salmon. I can eat salmon every day. So I was like, let me switch it up.
How does your body feel after eating chicken?
Not good. Not good.
Right?
But it wasn't immediate. It wasn't immediate. It was just like later on, I was like, ooh, my stomach's, I'm getting like these cramps that I haven't gotten since I was a kid. And then as I kept eating the leftover chicken, it just kept happening more and more to the point where I'm like, what is happening? And then I'm like,
this is the point.
It's the chicken.
Our bodies aren't made to consume that kind of thing. Okay, we learn to develop it over time and the pain goes away. But have you ever eaten a meal and you felt so sluggish afterwards? Like you just full and you just want to sleep. Being vegan now, I can eat anything I want and feel fine. Like that doesn't weigh down on me anymore. And that's what your body's meant to feel like. Food is meant to fuel you and give you energy to keep going, not make you want to stop and fall asleep.
See, this is the perfect topic for you to do a podcast on because this is just flowing out of you right now. So this is great, but that's not why
we've been doing it a year as well. Like this is just things.
That's right. Wow.
So
okay. Yeah. None of this is what I want to talk about at all. So shame on you for getting me on this rant pitch. But no, in all seriousness,
just before we continue, did you listen to those things that I sent you about fish?
No, no, I haven't yet. I said I was going to, but then I got excited because I wanted to invite you on to do this podcast super last minute. And then I totally forgot about it until right before I got on. I'm like, oh no. So I got to go back. #NotPerfect. If anybody listening right now has ever messaged or emailed me, they know to like wait at least a week before hearing back, unless you're one of my one-on-one clients. You get a 3-day promise, but even then, 3-day promise, you know?
3 days.
So in all seriousness, Petch, it's a pleasure to have you on. You're in Manchester in the UK, is that right?
I am. Yep.
Lovely. And so you're only the, I think, second guest from Manchester. Shout out to Ross Grant. And yeah, we're gonna dive into some heavy stuff.
Yes,
we gave a disclaimer before we started, but it was important for me to bring you on, Petch, because this has been such a relevant topic in 2020. And like in a week, I heard from 3 different people who lost loved ones, and I'm like, man. And being the helper, I always want to help. Yeah. And that's going to lead to some questions I have in a little bit.
Cool.
But I found myself saying like, okay, this isn't my domain. Like who's the expert? And given the fact that you're doing a podcast on this, I'm like, okay, we got to bring on Petch.
I'll stop you there just quickly. Like I don't profess to be an expert either. Like #NotPerfect. I can only speak from my personal experiences. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a counsellor. So, take everything I say with a pinch of salt, but know that I've been there and I've lived through the experiences. So I feel like I'm at a level where I can give some solid advice.
Absolutely.
I think that's all anybody can do, because grief is one of these topics where everybody, okay, you've got your 5 stages of grief, which everybody knows, but everybody experiences it completely different. And it's totally fine to feel it in any way, shape or form that you are doing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm going to ask you about your experiences, but first, you just mentioned therapy. And right before we hopped on, I was listening to your first episode of your podcast, which is the Mourning Brew. Yep. And mourning spelt with a M-O-U-R-N. I thought that was very clever. And although you're in the UK, you put a U in everything over there. So
yeah, but you put Z's in everything over there, so it's even.
We do a lot of things we shouldn't do over here. So I Jesus. I want to no, but I do want to ask you, because you just mentioned you're not a therapist, you're not a counselor, and in your episode you're an advocate of therapy. And it seems like it's a stigma. Therapy is a stigma over here too. And I'm going to link up an episode in the show notes. We had Abraham Scully on, who is a mental health professional and speaks on mental health topics and therapy. I'll have to shoot you his info, because he'd be great to talk to about this, or even just connect with. And there's a stigma around therapy here in the States, especially among men. But from what I understand, there's more of a stigma over in the UK. Is that accurate?
Oh, 100%. 100%, yeah. We watch programs and films, and that's all a lot of the UK people do to try and get knowledge of American culture. I'm a massive fan of American culture. But you have these talks.
You and your grape soda.
Oh, I love I really want to try grape soda. You
I'll
promised
send
me
you one.
Grape soda. Yes. We've got that live on the podcast.
We got it. We got it.
But yeah, we have these conversations in the playground when we're kids and around the water cooler. When we're adults and things like that. And it's like general Americanisms get passed around, and it's like, all the Americans are in therapy for something or other. And we see that as, or we tend to see that as a negative thing, like, especially blokes. Like, I'm a man, I can deal with it myself. My dad was a bloke's bloke, wouldn't talk about his feelings. But there are exceptions to the rule, which I'll go into a bit later on. But, for the most, I don't think I saw my dad cry until his dad passed away.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the stigma that kids, especially from a working class background like myself, are brought up with. You just man up is a massive thing. Man up, grow a set of balls, stop being a pussy, just be a guy. Big boys don't cry. There's that whole song, Big Boys Don't Cry, and that's the thing that we are led to believe. So therapy over here is getting better. More people that I'm speaking to are seeking therapy for mental health, and my best friend, he's just done a bout of it, and I'm really proud of him for going through things and seeking it out.
Great.
But yeah, it was and still is, to a massive part, very stigmatized, and I'm a big advocate of people breaking down that stigma. I think mental health is something. I mean, we go to the gym every day to train our physical health, so why shouldn't we go to someone else to train our mental health and just keep that strong and keep that going? Because it all starts up here. Everything starts up here. If you want to walk, you have to think it first. So let's train this. Let's train the mind. Let's get that healthy before we do anything else. So
that's so good. And I think that especially men over here as well, like, we do the same thing, man up. And what I love about a group I'm in, it's called the G-Men group. There's a community I'm in called Grindation. And you might see, if anybody sees my Instagram stories Monday nights, you see me and my G-Men, and we talk about feelings. Right? What's that?
It's better than you and your seamen.
Me and the seamen. Yeah, that's a different group. We meet on a different day of the week. So me and the G-Men, gosh, we talk about therapy. And I went to a G-Men retreat, and that's how I connected with Abraham Scully. Right. And gosh, like, grown men crying, and we're talking about all the things that men usually bond over, and we're like really breaking it down. Things like pornography, things like therapy, things like being, some people confessed about like not being faithful in relationships, whether currently or in the past. And we're talking about all these things. And I'm like, if more men would just talk about their feelings, maybe we wouldn't have so many problems in the world.
Well, isn't like male suicide under the age of 40 or something? It's ridiculous. It's like 1 every 2 hours. Well, over here it's 1 every 2 hours. One man,
it's crazy,
every 2 hours commits suicide over here, and I think that's just bonkers. And there's this whole thing of men have to provide, men have to be the strong one of the family, and it's not like that anymore. And I'm glad to see that the youth of today that are coming up, they're more open about their feelings and the thoughts, and they're just more open about everything, to be fair. The issues that we've spoken about just off air, but you know, I can have conversations with them, which I couldn't have with my mates growing up.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's refreshing. I just think the older generation now need to catch up.
Yeah, 100%. Well, Petch, let's talk about you. Let's talk about your story.
Okay.
So first things first, we're talking about mourning. We're talking about grief.
Yes.
But I totally forgot about this until I listened to your podcast. Your mom was told that she couldn't conceive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So first off, I just want to point that out, that you're doing a podcast on grief, and technically you're not supposed to be alive.
I'm not.
Like the chances of that happening, like, holy crap, like.
Well, the chances of us being born anyway are like 1 in 400 trillion. 1 in 400 trillion of us just being here.
Yeah.
My odds were way worse than that. Like, my mum was old. She could not have kids.
Yeah.
My mum was married 3 times. The last time was to my dad. The first time, her being told that she could not conceive was I think it was a deal breaker for that relationship. And she's told me in the past that she loved that guy with all her heart. But he really wanted kids. She couldn't give kids. So the best thing for them to do was to part. So she got married to a second one. That's by the by. You know how I tell you my life's complicated? It starts here. My mum and dad got together. They were both truckers. My mum was like one of the first female truckers.
No way.
In England. Yeah. She actually
got cool.
She actually got barred from one of the service stations in England because there was no female changing at the time. So she went into the males changing to have a shower.
Yeah.
It's called Watford Gap. It's a big service station over here, but she got barred from there because she went into and have a shower and wasn't allowed. So that's
good for your mom. I love
my
when people break gender norms, especially against the stereotype of the white male.
My mum loved it. She was all about
Hell
that.
Yeah.
And so that's where she met my dad, trucking. But my dad was married to his second wife at the time that they got together. So we were talking about infidelity. That's how I was conceived.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So when my mum found out she was pregnant, obviously it was the biggest thing in her life. Like, and my dad was, no, you can't have it. Like, have an abortion. Like, he said to my mum, have an abortion. And my mum was like, no, this is the best thing that you could ever give me. And if that means we're not together anymore, we're not together anymore. But I'm having the kid. So needless to say, here I am. Shouldn't have been here. My dad didn't want me here, but I'm here.
That's great. Oh my God. That is such a great story.
And I think that's why me and my mum have such a very, very strong bond. That's why I'm closer to my mum than I am to absolutely anybody else in the world. It's because she's confided that in me, and I felt a lot of pressure of that growing up.
Yeah.
I promised my mum that she'd be there at my wedding. I promised my mum that she would have grandkids of her own. So, as I said, my mum was married twice before my dad. My dad was married twice before my mum. My dad had, all in all, 7 children. I'm the youngest of 7. 5 to one to another, and then 1 to my mum. So yeah, they've all had kids now, so grandkids, and my dad was around to experience the grandkids, and my mum was around to experience the grandkids on that side, but my mum never had her own grandkids, like blood. So I put this burden on myself that I would give her grandchildren. That never happened. And, it kills me to this day.
Yeah, well, let's fill listeners in on what happened. So this is going to take us into, and everyone break out the tissues, why you're experienced when it comes to grief. So obviously your mom's not here right now.
No, my mom's not here.
She was the more recent loss that you've experienced. Is that right?
Yeah, she passed New Year's Day, 2019.
Okay. And and tell us a little bit about the loss you had experienced before that.
Before that, okay. So another weird story for you, man. I don't think you know this one.
Okay.
I never met my grandma and granddad Smith on my mum's side. They died in the 70s. I was born in the 80s. Never met them. I was born with a heart defect. Like, I shouldn't have been born anyway, but I was born poorly. to the point where my doctor on his wedding day came to support my mum to see me off.
Wow.
And I died. I was off. Don't know how long. My mum said was for a few minutes. Then I woke up, said grandma, granddad did it, and went back to sleep. For the next week, I was singing my grandma and granddad's song. You know how every couple has a song?
Wait, how old were you during this?
I was 3. So, like, able to speak, but not.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I could communicate and I could hum a tune. But the fact that I was singing this song, a song that I'd never heard, couldn't relate it to anybody. Yeah. My mum was just like, where did you hear that? I don't know. So, yeah. So that's a weird story. Again, shouldn't be here. Actually fast.
Crazy story. You know, I've heard bits and pieces of your story before, but I don't know if I ever heard them all in one sitting. So this is just blowing my mind. Like, we're gonna have to keep talking about this off air. Anyway.
Definitely, yeah.
So you never met
my grandma and granddad Smith.
On
my mum's side.
On your mom's side. Okay.
Yeah. I eventually met my grandma and granddad Petcher on my dad's side. I say eventually, I wasn't meant to be part of the family. Don't forget, I was born like.
Oh my goodness!
They kept me quiet for a long time. They kept me quiet until my brother's mum passed away on Christmas Eve. And then a couple of months. I say a couple of months. I don't know the timeline exactly, but I was then moved into the house. Me and my mum then moved into the house. So.
And how old are you at this age?
I think I'm 5.
Okay.
I think I'm 5.
Yeah. And it was your mom's brother who passed when you moved into the house?
No. My dad's second wife.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So my brother's mum passed.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So we moved into the house. So I got to know the family, met my grandma and granddad, and back in 95, I was in year 5 in middle school. I don't know what your school system is there. So I was 10 at this point, and I was getting ready to go to school as per usual, and everyone was round at my dad's house, well, around at our house, hugging and kissing and crying, and I didn't know anything that was going on. My mum proceeded to get me ready for school, went to school, and I was like, Mum, tell me what's happening, what's wrong with Dad? And it was there just before I was walking into the school gates where she said, your granddad passed last night. So that was my first experience of death.
Okay.
Just as I'm about to walk into school, my granddad died, and I loved my granddad. He was like he was kind of like the Don of any mafia film that you see. He always sat in his chair, and everyone would come over and pay his respects to him. And he was just every time I went round to his house, he had a little toy car for me to play with, and I loved him. And that it stung, and I didn't know how to take it. I thought I just had to carry on the day as normal. We had an assembly. We sang this song that we sing in not every assembly, but 9 times out of 10 we'd sing this song. It's called Streets of London. Don't know if you've heard it. And for some reason, I just burst into tears. I think the first lyric is, have you seen the old man who walks the streets of London? And old man came into my head, pictured of my granddad, and boom, I just floods of tears. That was my first experience of death. I wasn't allowed to go to the ceremony as such. Like, it was an open casket. They didn't want me to experience that. So I was sat in the car with a few of my cousins trying to work out what the hell was going on. And at that point, you cry a little, but you're a kid. You kind of bounce back. It doesn't make that much sense. Like, I love my granddad, don't get me wrong, but I wasn't close with him. We just visited them every now and again. So that was my first experience of death. My grandma passed, I think, 10 years after my granddad passed. And this one is really hazy for me.
So at this point, you're a teenager, right?
Teenager going into, teenager. So what, I was 10? No, so it's 20. I was 20. So late teens,
okay.
early 20s. I was working. I remember that much. I had a girlfriend, and my grandma's health kind of deteriorated, but she was an older lady anyway. She went into a home, but her and my mum had this massive, really close connection. I think mainly because my mum didn't have a mum, and she adopted my grandma, kind of thing, and they were really cute together. There was one time in hospital, I have to tell you this, one time in hospital, my grandma had been in for like a checkup or something, and she had to stay in over a week. And as they were releasing her, my mum went to pick her up, dressed in a witch's costume for Halloween, handed her a broom, and went, "There you are, you wicked old witch. There's your ride. Fly off home." The ward just cracked up. My grandma just turned round to her and went, "Shut up." But that's how close they were. It was brilliant.
Yeah.
I remember one Christmas going into the home where they were, and I dressed up as Santa to go see my grandma just to give her a bit of a laugh. And as I was walking out, the person on reception was like, "Would you mind just going around some of the other homes and just cheering them up?"
Oh,
That was kind of that. I don't remember my grandma dying. I don't remember how I felt.
Okay.
I remember, and I think I'm clouded by what happened afterwards. And it was at my grandma's kind of wake after the funeral. And I didn't even meet. I saw one of my brothers for the first time. Like, I've never met this brother. I've never spoken to him, never shook his hand. He refuses that his dad, but he was there at my grandma's funeral, and the whole thing is clouded by that. And that really upsets me. I know I was close to my grandma. I loved her, but the fact that I can't remember her death affects me.
Yeah.
In a completely different way. And again, that's grief.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of like I've put a mental block on that, and I don't know why. And I will work through it. It's nothing that I'm worried about as such.
Is that something you've talked about in therapy at all?
No, and it isn't really until speaking to you now that it's kind of coming out.
Sometimes we don't know.
No, exactly. You put these blocks in your mind just so that you can continue. I think I was going through a really bad relationship at the time, and my mum and dad, I think, were thinking about moving down to Mablethorpe, so they were moving away from the hometown, and it was all these other little extremities that was going on that I focused more of my attention there than I did on my grandma. But again, it affected me, and I know I tried, and so that was my second dealing with grief. And then from there on, you kind of deal with family, friends, should I say, that that pass. You go to a couple of aunties' funerals, but the biggest one then was my dad. My dad died in 2009. I was working in a bank, doing a job I hated.
Just really quick, at this point, you're in your, mid to early 20s?
I was 23.
Okay. So it's only a few years after your grandma passed.
Yeah. Okay. Only a couple of years after my grandma passed. And again, wow, that shocks me.
Yeah.
I think, they went within. I think that's why I've blocked my grandma, to be fair, is because my dad's kind of taken over.
Okay.
Wow, we're making progress here. Like, you're my therapist. I love this.
Yeah. I'm just asking.
No, it's good. It's good because this will help me in my podcast.
Yeah, dude, steal away.
So, my dad passed in 2003.
Okay.
And this hurt. I was doing amateur dramatics. I was doing panto. I played the comedy character in panto. I don't know if you know panto over there, but there is a clown character, and that was me. And
okay.
It was at a rehearsal. I got a phone call from my dad. My dad never calls me on a Monday because he knows I'm at rehearsal. And he called me, and I was like, "Not right now, Dad. Like, I need to focus on this rehearsal." So I put the phone. Like, I didn't answer it. If you needed me to leave me a message, I'll call him back straight after. Did the rehearsal. Came home. It was a hard rehearsal. I came home with my then girlfriend, and I collapsed in this chair, and we were just chatting about how crazy it was, because she was in the company as well. She was a dancer, and we were just chatting how crazy it was. And I then get a call from my mum. And I was like, oh shit, yeah, my dad called. So I picked up the call, and I just hear silence. I was like, Mum? Then I hear a sob. Mum, you all right? And then I just hear this choking, like trying to catch a breath. And I'm like, Mum, what's going on? You're worrying me now. What's going on? Then I hear the phone being snatched and the neighbour saying, Lee, it's such and such. I forgot her name. Lee, it's such and such. Your dad's died. And I was like, what? Like, your dad's died. I said, don't joke with me. That's not fucking funny. What the fuck's going on? Where's my mum? And eventually, like, my girlfriend had to calm me down because I was angry. Like, they don't tell you that. You can experience anything. Like, when you watch films and things, you see people just break down into tears and start bawling their eyes out.
Oh my God.
It's never,
especially
ever like that.
Especially I'm thinking of the shows we have, TV shows we have here in Chicago. They're dramas. They thrive off drama. And whenever there's news like that, crippled to the floor.
Single tear or all of it just comes out, and it's not like that. My gut emotion at that point was, don't joke with me. Like, it's not a fucking funny joke. And then I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach and all my air came out. And my mum came back on the phone and she tried to explain what had happened. And then things just happened so fast. So I called my brother, who was just living just down the road from me, and I was trying to work out how to get to my mum because, like I said, they moved away at this point. They'd moved 2 hours away and I couldn't go there and then. I needed to pack some stuff and get down, and it wouldn't matter if I got there. Anyway, carrying on with the story of grief, that was a big one. That was a life-changing moment for me.
Really quick on before we move on, you mentioned that your gut reaction was to get angry. And, you know, Ross is very open with his story when he lost his dad, of how, like, he was just kind of in shock. Do you find that with initial news that there isn't necessarily one particular way we react? Like, what's your experience been?
No, because every time I've heard about death, I've reacted a different way.
Interesting. Okay.
And I
think that's helpful to know.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I'd like to speak to more people about this. One of the reasons I've set up the podcast is so that I can speak to more people about this. But for me, I think the reaction comes from your kind of relationship with that person. So me and my dad, even though we loved each other, and we did, and we had a lot of bridges to build, like bridges to mend. The first thing my dad ever said was abort him. Do you know what I mean? My dad didn't want me there. And then because he, when he lost his wife and then we moved in, everything I was doing was compared to my brother. And it was like he was favorite. So I had to always fight for his attention. And, you know, he came to loggerheads and stuff like that. So we had a mutual kind of relationship. So I think anger came because of that.
Interesting.
With my grandma, I think it was something different. With my mum, I know it was something different. With Clint, again, it was something different. So carrying on with like my stages of other people that I lost. 2 years ago, I lost my best friend, a guy called, Clinton Maxwell Blakely, a guy that I went to upper school with. We played rugby together. We did school shows together. We were in a band together. We did Air Cadets together. He was my best friend. Like, I have a couple of best friends. He was, you know, my dad gave me this one piece of advice. He says, you can count the number of friends you have on one hand. Like, your true friends. Like, people who will be there for you no matter what. And Clint was on that list. Like, if ever I needed him, he would be there. And I got a phone call from my other best friend saying, are you sat down? And I was walking at the time. I said, no. He said, sit down. And he said, yeah, Clint's passed. And that one was shock.
Yeah.
He was my age. He was no age. He was a fit rugby player. And he died on the pitch, on the side of the pitch at halftime. And I couldn't believe that one.
Yeah.
That one stung. That one really, really stung. Grandma and granddad, I can expect. They're older than me. Like, that's the way it's supposed to go. My dad, was too young. He didn't lead the healthiest lifestyle, but he was still too young. But Clint shouldn't have happened. He was fit.
Yeah. There's something about when people are younger that it really knocks the wind out of us.
Yeah,
and
100%.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I'm thinking about the time I lost one of my childhood friends, and that was a little different because we had lost touch over the years and we'd talk every now and then. But yeah, for me, it was shock. And it took me a while to process that one. So yeah.
I actually lost a classmate of mine back in 2000 and what was it? 2010, 2011. Still in upper school. We'd just done our GCSEs. They're our big exams before you move on to like college and things like that. And it was over the summer, and he was out riding his bike and he got hit by a taxi driver before he got his exam results. And he was in my class. And again, that one was a weird one. Like, I knew him.
It's weird. Like, it's so weird. Like, that's the word that like always came to mind with me and my friend Dave. Like, it's just weird.
Because he's not going to be there anymore.
Yeah.
And he had a life in front of him. He was a really good rugby player, and he could have gone pro. And yeah, he shouldn't have gone like that. But yeah, with Clint, yeah, that one, I actually posted something on Facebook about how I'll miss him and how he died doing the thing that he loved, and one of the papers picked it up as my status and just plastered it everywhere, and I felt so bad. I felt awful. Like, I didn't post that post for anybody to copy to try and get fame. I didn't post that to get attention. I posted it because I needed to read that, and the fact that they'd gone and just plastered it everywhere. And at his funeral, you know, people came up to me and asked me, and I was like, no, I didn't give anybody permission to use that. But his funeral was something else. Like, it was packed inside the church, and the whole parking area was packed. Like, it was just everybody from the community came out for that one, and that was nice to see. But this is what I forgot to tell you. With my dad, I didn't cry at his funeral. It took me years before I could cry again after my dad died.
How come?
I cried when he died, but I didn't cry for years afterwards. Not even at his funeral.
Why do you think that is?
Because I had to be strong. I then had to be the leader of the household. Bearing in mind I'm the youngest of 7, I had to help my mum through everything. I had to organise my dad's funeral. I had to sort out the bills, the pension, the benefits. I had to make sure the day went without a hitch, because Petshire funerals are notorious for people kicking off. I've got another brother who nobody wanted at the funeral, so I had to keep an eye out on that. I had the brother who I was compared to all my life. I love him, but he's not the strongest, and he needed somebody to be there for him. Like, he's 10 years older than me, Act's 20 years younger, so I needed to be there for him. I had to be there for everyone.
So how come the responsibility was put on you?
Because I'm the only one that would step up.
Okay.
One of my sisters came down to spend time with my mum whilst I was dealing with everything else. But ultimately, it came down to me.
Wow. Okay. Everyone listening, before we move forward, because we still got a little bit further to go with this, I just want to invite you all to check in with yourself, see how you're feeling. And something that I love that you say on your podcast, Petch, is like, if now's not the right time to listen to this, you can come back. That's okay.
Honestly.
And so I think sometimes for me, when I'm listening to a podcast or listening to the news or listening to something that's just depressing me, I don't take a minute, like hit pause and be like, how do I actually feel right now? And I ask this to myself out loud. I say, how do I feel right now? I'm like, not great. Like, not terrible, but not great. I'm like, okay, let's put something else on. And then I'm like, oh, I'm much better now. And it's not about, this is where I really want to clearly differentiate. It's not about, oh, don't look at the burning house, look at the beautiful butterfly. It's like, okay, I need to get my strength up so I can give that caring and attention to that burning house.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah, because I'm going to come back, but I'm going to sit down for a minute. So I just want to point that out for everybody.
This is kind of why I call my podcast the Mourning Brew. It's like, if you need to go away and have a cup of tea, come back. Like, I'm always going to be.
Yeah. We're going to transition into some ways that we can cope and things like that. But you have one more story for us, Petch.
Yeah, the real ball buster was my mum back in 2019. I say back. I mean, it's not time at all.
Yeah,
No time at all. And I spoke to her New Year's Eve because I was going to see my girlfriend sing at a pub for New Year's Eve. So I was there, and I knew that my mum doesn't count in the New Year's, especially since my dad died. So she goes to bed quite early. So I spoke to her, and do you know what? It was coming up to the 10-year anniversary of my dad dying. The next year, the year she died, was the 10-year anniversary of my dad. And it was during Emma singing a song, I text both my mum and my brother and said, come on, let's do something special this year for my dad. And she never got it. We went to bed, and I woke up to a phone call again from my mum's best friend. And she was in a panic on the phone. And this is where something else came over me at this point. She was like, your mum's not breathing. I said, what does that mean? Right, Iris, come on, breathe now. I need you to focus. Why are you phoning me and not the ambulance? Do I need to come down? Like, it's 2 hours away. Do I need to set off now and be there? Or do I have time to pack and come down? Like, how serious is this? Because my mum was a poorly person anyway. Like, but we've had scares before, but nothing like that we needed to worry about. So it's like, look, we've gone through this before, Iris. Like, is this the same thing? Like, I'll come down, no question about that, but like, how much time do I have? Anyway, she couldn't give me an answer. So I was like, right. Emma was like, okay, take a breath. Took a breath. She's like, okay, let's get ready and we'll start heading down. Anything they need to say, they can call me. She's like, I'll drive. And I said, no, I need to keep my mind focused right now. If I don't focus, something's going to go off in my head. And just as we were about to set off, I got the phone call saying that the ambulance people were there and she'd passed. And again, I needed to drive. I needed to take my mind off what was happening. I didn't want it to be real. And this one was really hard for me because they've only got a certain amount of time that you're allowed to keep the body in the place where it's passed away before, by law, they have to take it to the mortuary. And I was like, I'm just around the corner. Can you keep her? Can you keep her? Can you keep her? Like, I need to see her. I need to see from my own eyes. Otherwise, I don't believe it. And I got a phone call saying, no, time's back. We have to take her now. And they wouldn't let me see my mum for about 3 weeks because they needed an autopsy and everything. And it was just the worst 3 weeks of my life because any minute my mum could walk back in. Any minute.
Yeah.
Until I saw her lying there, I refused to believe it. And that was the worst one for me. Like I said, I had a really close bond with my mum, and losing one parent is hard. Losing both is just something I can't even describe what it feels like, but losing the one that you feel like, my mum was my best friend. She was everything to me. And I used to, because my best mate lost his mum when he was young, and I could never quite fathom how people can get over that, how people can carry on. Like my dad, our relationship wasn't great. I've said that, but it hurt. But my mum, that was something different.
Yeah. So even though you had experienced all that,
nothing prepared me. Nothing could prepare me. If my mum had died at the grand old age of 102, I would have said, fair play, mum, you've had a crack at it. Go peacefully.
Yeah.
But no, she didn't. She was the same age as my dad when my dad died. So there was 10 years age difference between my mum and my dad, and 10 years death difference between them as well. So they both died at the same age. Both in January, both before my birthday. I hate January now. My mum died on the 1st of January, my dad died on the 12th.
Okay.
And they were both born in February. So the start of the year, I hate.
Yeah.
I hate it.
Yeah, I don't blame you at all. So we talked about the different reactions that happen. Petch, how do you cope now?
You take every day one step at a time. it's cliche to fuck, but it's true. I say, I've said this to a few people. There are days where I don't think about it.
Mhm.
That's a lie. I think about it every day. There are days where it doesn't affect me.
Yes.
There are days where I laugh and I have so much fun. I have the best days of my life. And then it will hit me like that. And then I will be a wreck for another day. And it's hard to manage that swing, that yo-yo of emotions if you don't have a good control over it. And when it happened with my dad, I didn't have a control over it. And when it first happened with my mum, I knew what was going to happen, but again, it's hard to, when you're in it, it's hard to grasp it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it isn't until you can actually go take a step back and breathe. And whatever time that is for you, that's absolutely fine. But there's going to be a time where you go, right, okay, I need to kind of get a handle on this now.
Yeah, if I can speak to that really quick, and I'm not going to speak to it about depth, or I'm sorry, about death, but I do want to emphasize your point. For me, being a mindset coach, studying the crap out of mindset, personal development, and all of that fun stuff, I've learned a lot about when I get in what I call my dark moods, those deep dark moods. And for me, it's usually around financial stress. So again, I'm talking about something totally different, but I think it'll help explain your point. Whether it's financial stress, whether it's trauma of some kind, I don't know, just all these different situations. And I'm at the point now where I can recognize when that's happening. It doesn't mean I'm like super coherent, but I can recognize when that's happening.
Yeah.
And I'm like, ooh, okay. And because I can catch it now, I can give myself permission to operate differently. I'm like, no, Tony, this to-do list that you were planning on getting done today, it's not getting done.
No.
Because you're in a mood and you're pissed and you're hurt and you're not thinking straight. I'm thinking, this is such a dumb example for comparison, but I remember God, it was a year ago now. I had the biggest crush on this girl, and I was convinced she felt the same way about me. And I got the tough news on the phone with her that she had feelings for someone else. And I'm like, whoa! And then again, like totally silly comparison.
It's not like relationship.
It was in that mood where I was like, I went from feeling euphoria every day because, oh my gosh, I'm getting all these new feelings. It's exciting. I haven't felt this way in a while to, oh, I was wrong. Oh, there's someone else. And I remember the next day in the airport, I was a mess because I was traveling the next day. I was a mess and I didn't care because I was in that emotional state.
But that's fine because you say it's a stupid comparison and it's not. It's the death of a relationship. It's the death of something that could have been. Like all these new feelings and things like that. That's like the birth of something. Like this relationship that you've fathomed in your head. That's the birth of it. And all these great things that have happened between you. That's the relationship. And then for you to find out that she likes somebody else. That's the death of it. So you're going to grieve the death of the relationship. And it's like, I say it's silly, and I think you know what I mean by that, because it's so tiny in comparison, and yet there are similarities. That's so weird. But this is kind of what, I don't know if you're going to ask this a bit later on, but this is kind of what helps a little bit with when someone's going through grief, is the fact that, tell me your problems. Let me in my own mind judge you for having such small problems, because I would kill that problem again. Do you know what I mean?
Hold on, break that down. So when you say tell you my problems, you mean me, Tony, tell you, Patch, your problems? In that moment?
Tell me your problem. Like,
yeah.
Sometimes I need a distraction of what's going on in my life. And what people tend to do is go, oh, my life's shit. Oh, but no, it's fine in comparison. And I was like, no, tell me what's going on with you.
Yeah. Okay, good. So we're transitioning now into like other people's reactions. Yeah. So this is perfect.
So it's fine. So tell me what's
one
going
of the
on
things we can do is just treat you like a normal person.
Just treat me like a fucking normal person. I'm not dead. I'm not dying unless that person is dying, but still they want to be treated normally. Like, so your comparison, sure, empathy, but at the same time, you know, we're not stupid. We know life goes on, and yeah, we will silently judge you for having such small, pitiful problems. But in our own heads, we'll be like, "Damn, do you remember when that was my biggest problem?"
Yeah.
Do you remember when I had to go to work at a cinema and somebody just not like the sweet popcorn, and that was my biggest problem.
Yeah.
I'd kill to have that day back again. And because we're in such a weird place, we might be in one of those kind of euphoric moods where we give you some fucking decent advice because we can see it from the outside. We are no holds barred at that point. Like, the worst thing that has ever happened to us has just happened. So we can see your problem for being as small as it is. And even though it's a big thing to you, we can give you advice that you may not want to hear, but might actually help.
So now you've experienced a lot of grief and loss.
Yeah.
Did you ever find times where people treating you like a normal person wasn't helpful?
Again, I think it depends on the person who's treating you like a normal person.
And everybody, as you're listening, like, think of how this applies if you're not currently experiencing grief. Like, I think it's important to, because there's so many things that we do. We're like, oh, I'm so sorry. And and the next thing we know, Petch, you're taking care of me in the moment, like, which is the last thing you need to do.
No,
but I think it's important to know, like, there's differences between the person and things like that. So
there are cliches. There are cliches that people do, and it's all I'm sorry for your loss. And I get it. That's what people are trying to say because they have nothing else to say. And I empathize with that, but it's not my job to empathize with you at that moment in time. It's not my problem that you can't think of anything else to say. And I've heard I'm sorry from every other fucker out there. And at one point, you start thinking in your own head, is it your fault? Did you kill my mom? Because if you did, and now you're apologizing, it's a bit too fucking late. But if you didn't, then you can't really be sorry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What people are really saying is that I'm sorry to learn that your mum has passed. Do you know what I mean? It's not I'm sorry for your loss. It's I'm sorry that I've had to hear that your mum's passed. So I'd say don't say that, but some people can't think of anything else to say, and that's fine. But don't be the other person doesn't respond the way that you want to respond to that. Like, there's only so many times we can go, it's okay. Well, no, it's not okay.
So let people respond how they're feeling.
Let them respond to how, it's okay for the person grieving to feel.
Especially if you're going to bring it up.
Yeah. Otherwise, don't bring it up. Like, I know you.
Now, what if it's, let's say you experienced another loss and it's my first time talking to you since then?
What would I want you to say to me?
Yeah. Like, what if I want to, because like in my mind, and I'm also not challenging you. I'm just thinking about like the next time I'm in this situation, I'm like, I know me and I'm going to want to acknowledge it. How can I best acknowledge it? And again, knowing that this is just your opinion, like how
it's different because you're my friend. Right. So you say,
so it's different depending on the relationship with the person 100%. Too.
So you do the thing where somebody passes and you put it on Facebook, mainly because you don't want to text every other fucker in your phone book going, my mum's died, because typing that out time and time again kills you.
And then you get those responses at different moments throughout the day. That's a lot.
So you put it on Facebook so that everyone can see. If I'm going to be a bit shitty with you right now, it's because my mum's died. If I'm not responding to you right now, it's because my mum's died. But it's also to let friends and family know that my mum has died. And in those comments that you get back, you get friends going, mate, I'm really sorry for your loss. And you're like, do you know what? You genuinely mean that. You're my friend. Or you get Joe Blogs who you've not seen since high school going, mate, I'm sorry for your loss. Well, no, you're not. We've not spoken in 30 years. Fuck off. You know what I mean? And you get the other one like, I'm here if you need to talk. Bitch,
I was going to say that one. Yeah.
I couldn't talk to you back in high school. What makes you think that I'm going to open up my heart right now in my most vulnerable state to you of all people? You used to bully me back then. No.
Yeah.
You're not there.
And you say this in your initial episode. It's like, we've never had a deep conversation. Why am I going to? Yeah. No. Whereas me and you, Petch, Tony and Petch, we have had deep conversations.
Yeah. I think what would kind of not put me off I'd be reluctant to talk to you the same way that I was kind of reluctant to talk to Ross initially, is because you're both mindset coaches, and I didn't need that.
Yeah.
I didn't need that.
Yeah.
I didn't need someone to tell me how to get through it. I didn't need someone to go in, well, if you just focus on the positives. I know that shit. Right now, I want to focus on the fucking negatives. I want to focus on my mum not being there.
Petch, I'm gonna give you a sneak peek at something that everybody listening, if you're on the Actor Self-Care newsletter over at TonyRossiCoaching.com, this already went out a week or so ago, so you'll have already experienced it. If you're not, get your butt on the Actor Self-Care newsletter at TonyRossiCoaching.com. But literally, the email is all about, I don't want you to be happy right now. And I share how when I was very first introduced to mindset 6 years ago, all the top mentors that I was exposed to said, don't watch the news. Don't watch it. It's bad. It's negative. And I get what they were trying to do. But as a cis white male, a straight white male, person of privilege, that just made my sheltered life even more sheltered. And I missed out on all of these stories. Granted, it's not their fault. I listened to it. Like, I was in control of my own actions, but I was already living a sheltered life, and it just kept me there and pushed me further into this sheltered life. And so I said, look, I don't agree with a lot of positive speak that's out there. And at the time we're recording this, we just lost like Ruth Bader Ginsburg like 24 hours ago. And that comes with a whole nother set of challenges, like Chadwick Boseman just a couple weeks prior. Like, this year has been hard. And I'm like, I'm not going to be the guy to tell you just be positive.
Nope.
And I think it's interesting you brought that point up, because I literally was drafting out that email before we got on. And I'm like, that's one of all of our biggest challenges before we go to therapy or before we go to a coach. And I had to tell my therapist, I got snappy with her, and she's super cool, so she can handle it. Shout out to everybody who goes to therapy. I told her there are going to be times where I need advice, and there are going to be times where I just want to say it just to say it.
Yeah.
And I think, and I learned I have to communicate that with her because it's therapy, and that's why I'm there. So it's not necessarily, again, with your friend, it's not their job to try to like figure that out.
No,
but
it's not your job to fix me. Like,
yeah. And I'd say, as somebody, so we'll go back to relationships for a minute. Whenever I hear somebody broke up with their significant other, like, the first thing we think of is, oh my God, I'm so sorry. What I've started doing more recently, and I'm like, how are you?
Yeah.
And they're either going to say, because sometimes they're great. Sometimes they needed that breakup a year ago, and they're like, I'm fantastic. I'm already playing the field. Like, they're having a blast. But I think, like, we make these assumptions on how people feel when they go through a big transition.
And I think that's perfectly fine. I think that's one of the best things that you could say to somebody grieving. Like, how are you doing today?
Yeah. And that also gives you an opportunity to either be very open about it or to be very closed. And if they're very closed off, that's your answer. And then you respond accordingly.
Yeah. But there are times where people are going to be like, do you know what? I'm fine today. And they're going to mean it. Like, it's fine.
And you don't have to keep digging for answers.
No. Like, at this particular moment, I'm fine. You putting on another level is like, shit, I was fine. And now you've made me depressed again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's just like, I think that would be one of the best questions you can ask somebody, is like, honestly, how are you doing? Don't ask me if there's anything I need. Do you know what I need? I need my mum back. Can you do that? No. Then don't ask me. Do you know what I mean? I've got people around me to do the things that I need doing. Like, I've got Emma. I've got Ross. I've got yourself. I've got people who, if I need anything, I can call on.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need my family. They can get to fuck, but I've got the people who I need around me to do things. If I need you, I will come to you and I will ask you, no doubt, because I'm feeling the way that I'm feeling. You're going to say yes. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Don't ask me if I need anything, because my go-to anyway is, I need my mum back. I need my dad back. Sort that.
Yeah. So the biggest takeaway, I think, for all of us listening is, like, read the room.
Read the room.
Like you can say something, but like, read the room. And I personally hate cliches. So, I mean, I do want to acknowledge something happened, but I think I hate cliches. I hate saying the phrase, if you need anything, like, I'd rather just ask you how you are. But yeah, it sounds like the biggest thing is read the room. I want to touch really quick on something else that you say that you've touched on today, as well as in your initial episode, which is you can laugh and cry at the same time.
Yeah, I was going to segue onto this myself.
Cool.
It's okay for people grieving to feel the way that you feel. Like, if you feel happy, it's okay to feel happy. If you feel sad, it's okay to feel sad. And if you feel both at the same time, it's normal. It is perfectly fine. I had to speak a eulogy at both my mum and my dad's funeral. It was expected of me. I'm the actor. I had to get up and say some words.
Right, because if you're an actor, you can be a presenter, you can be an MC, you can be,
But the thing with my mum, and I said this on my podcast, my mum was the life and soul of any room. Of any room. She would make people laugh. To be fair, my dad was as well. But my mum wouldn't want people to be sad at a funeral. So we went and found the funniest photo we could of her in a Scottish like beret hat with ginger hair coming down. She's wearing this kilt. She's got her hands on her hips. She's got this biggest smile ever. And she looks cheesy. And we blew it up and we put it at the bottom of the coffin. So people walking in, their initial gut reaction was to laugh. And then you'd hear, shh, shh, can't laugh. It's like, no, you can. You can laugh at a funeral. It is fine. And I got up and I said, as many of you know, I'm an actor. And one of an actor's worst fears is drying on stage. We call that corpsing. Mum, you beat me at it again. And why not? Why not make a joke about it? Like, I found I did that a lot, and I still do now. I make people really, really uncomfortable about death because it's an uncomfortable emotion. But if you don't laugh about it, you will cry about it. I've got the ashes of my mum and dad on my fireplace back here. And I say to people like, oh, I'd love you to come on and meet my mum and dad. They're like, I thought they were passed. I said, yeah, no, their ashes are on. And you should see the faces. They don't know whether to laugh or...
I wouldn't... I mean, now that we're having this conversation, I would know what to do. I would be caught off guard.
Yeah, and it's fun. I find that so fun. I can do that to people because I've experienced it.
Yeah.
Like, it's such a weird subject. It's such a taboo subject. It's such a subject that people don't want to talk about. And everybody experiences.
And that just makes it worse.
If life goes the way it's supposed to go, no interruptions, no sudden freak accidents, nothing. If life goes and plays out the way it's supposed to play out, you will be born, your grandparents will die, your parents will die, then you will die, then your children will die. That's the way it's supposed to go. So at any point during that cycle, this is meant to happen. And we are all going to experience it. And the worst kind of loss that I have come to realize through talking to people is that of a parent losing a child.
Yeah.
Because that isn't the way it's supposed to go.
Right.
That isn't life following its natural pattern. There's a name for husbands and wives who lose the partner. There's names for children who lose the parents. There's no name for a parent who loses a child. There's no name for that.
So true.
So that's, and I touch wood, I have not had to experience that yet.
Yeah.
I say, I don't want to experience that. And my heart bleeds for anybody who goes through that. I couldn't.
For sure.
Especially in 2020 where that is such a big thing at the moment. Like anything could happen. But
yeah. I'm glad you touched on too about how you're allowed to laugh, you're allowed to make jokes, because I remember, and I totally forgot about this until now, my grandfather passed in 2009, I want to say. And he had Alzheimer's. So he was on his way out. And he was like really like people had to feed him by like his final days. So when he passed, it wasn't really, it was sad, but it was like, you know, he's in a better place right now. And I went to that memorial and, you know, he remarried. So his wife was like hysterical, and a lot of other people were really sad. And all I could think of at the time, and I was a much different person back then, of course, but all I could think about was, can't we celebrate his life? Like, I just wanted so badly to make it a celebration and not to, and of course, that's the positive Tony in me. I guess that's always something I want to do. But I was like, he's in a better place. Does this have to be all
And this
tears?
is it. Whether you're religious or not, I think that plays heavily into how you perceive death. Like the Catholics mourn it. Do you know what I mean? The Irish celebrate it.
Yeah.
And it's different cultures. And I think
I even asked one of the funeral directors there, and it wasn't an actual service, but one of the people in the memorial place that we had it. I was like, have you ever had one of these where everybody is celebrating? And that he brought up the Irish, and I'm like, God, I wish we were doing that right now.
And if is it Hindu or Sikh or Buddhism where you get reincarnated? You know what I mean? So people view that. I think this is what it comes down to, is the afterlife, whether you believe in it or not, and what you believe about it. If you believe that there is a heaven and they've gone to heaven, then that makes things a little bit easier. It's a sugary pill to swallow. Okay, they've gone, but you're going to see them again, and they're in a much better place. If you believe in eternal damnation and they're in purgatory, then that's going to make it harder for you. If you believe that they're reincarnated, you may see them again. Me, I'm agnostic. I don't really know what I believe, and I think that is where my turmoil comes from, because there are times where I go, Jesus, I would love to be religious right now. I would love to have a faith that they are going to be somewhere else. And that, I found that annoying when people who shove religion down my throat is like, well, there is, I
don't think any of us like that.
And I'm like, no,
regardless of what the religion is, it's like, you can share with me, but don't tell me. It's kind of like the positive thinker telling you how to think.
Yeah. 100%. I don't know. I don't know there's a heaven. Would I like to believe there's a heaven? Would I like to believe I can meet my mom and dad one day? Yes, I would love that. But until you can prove that to me, I will never know for certain. And the weird thing about all this conversation is I still fear death. I still fear death. It's one of my biggest fears of not being around anymore, and it will catch me off guard. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and even though I knew this to be true anyway, the sun has a sell-by date. The sun has a burn-out date. The sun will die at some point, which means life on Earth will die at some point. The whole Earth won't be here anymore. And that freaks me the fuck out.
Oh my.
The fact that nothing is going to be around anymore. And now you can do with that either like...
Oh, you said the sun. The sun, like the actual... Okay, I was like, wait. Sun. I was like, wait, the son of who? And how come he gets to decide when we all go? I don't like that.
No. This burning star in the sky that we revolve around. Yeah, that's going to burn out. Like, all stars die. And that means the Earth will die before this. And that freaks me out. And you can do one of two things. You can either use that to spur you on and life's short. Nothing's going to survive anyway. Let's do this. Or you can mourn and mope about it and... you're gonna die anyway, so let's live in misery. I kind of sit in the middle. I need that push from time to time, but I think again that's me still coping with my mum and my dad. Like they say time heal all wounds, and this annoys me. This cliche really does fucking gripe my gears. Time does not heal all wounds. This does not get better. Like it doesn't heal. You don't scab over it. It's not a scar. You can't stitch it back together. Loss is permanent, and it hurts, and it will continue hurting from now till the day that you die. What time does is it gives you opportunity to cope with it better. And that's all you're doing, is you're coping with it better. And some days are easier than others. And it doesn't mean that you are failing. It doesn't mean that you are doing anything wrong if you find yourself in the deepest, darkest depths of despair because something's just triggered you. It's fine. Just don't live there.
Yeah.
Don't live there. Keep climbing. Keep making each day. Just try and be better each day than you were the day before. And if you do slip, it's fine. We've all done it. We have all done it. This week I cried about my mum. Last year I cried about my dad. And that was 10 years. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. I'm always going to remember them. I'm always going to remember them, and it's always going to hurt. And yes, 9 times out of 10, I will try and remember a good memory. But you know what? Bad memories still come up. And you can't block them. You can't get rid of them. You just got to remember them for the time and let it hurt for the time and then move on. It's when you start repressing things and when you start bottling things up, that's when you start not crying, as I did for 10 years. After my dad died, not a tear.
Wow.
Not 10 years. I think it was about 5-6 years. I didn't cry.
As we start to wrap up, Petch, let's look at the year we're in right now at the time of this recording. It's 2020, and this has been a hard year.
Yeah.
And I want to go back to what you said, you can laugh and cry at the same time. I think one of the challenges being a mindset coach during this year is that it comes off, again, if people don't know you and they just see like maybe a post or two of yours, they'll think, oh, you're telling us to look at the beautiful butterfly, not the burning house. Mm-hmm. How can you take your perspective on death and see this year and allow yourself to enjoy the positives?
I know that nothing lasts. Nothing lasts. And with that knowledge, I know that what is happening this year won't last. So I can see that there will be a time where this ends, the whole COVID thing ends at some point, and it may not disappear completely.
Right.
Like we've never found a cure for the flu.
Exactly. Yeah.
But, we don't live in fear of the flu anymore.
Right.
And it'll take a few years or whatever. But, we will get to that point where we can look back and go, do you know what, 2020, what a bastard year that was. But it's sunnier now. Mm-hmm. And it's the same when you see people. I see it every day on either Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Somebody's lost somebody else. And that brings all the emotions back for me. Because I want to reach out to those people. And I won't, because I don't want to be that pushy person of, I've gone through all that, so talk to me. I'm there, like, if you need me. Again, that's why I started the podcast. Easier for people to find me rather than me pushing my agenda on people. But knowing, other people are going through this thing as well, I think it unites us. It unites absolutely everyone. And even though you might not have lost anyone since your granddad died, this is something that you will ultimately go through as well. And seeing how people are reacting to other people that are going through that thing just restores my faith in humanity. Yeah. And that's that's another positive that has come out of this. Like I've seen people rally around people and fight for people and be there and support people. My best friend, literally before I came on this podcast, called me up and said that his auntie has her cancer has now infected her stomach, and she's on palliative end of life care now. So she's going to die before Christmas. And it hits home that nothing is permanent, nothing is forever, and life, as much as, again, this is a cliche, life is short, and it is what you make of it. Mm-hmm. My mum made the most out of her last years. Without my dad, I know it crushed her and it killed her, and I saw her behind closed doors. I saw her positive mental attitude kind of deteriorate, but that was okay because it was with me and it was safe. But to everybody else, my mum made them smile. And that was it. She didn't have a fancy job. She wasn't rich by any stretch of the imagination, but she could put a smile on anybody's face. The most miserable bastard on this earth, if they met my mum, they would smile. She carried dog treats and cat treats in her pocket. She had sweets for children. And she just had this way with people. And if she can do that towards the end of her life and have that as her life mission, then I can do anything. And anybody can do anything. And you've just got to set yourself those small goals and just be there for other people. Stop thinking about yourself. Stop thinking about how hard life is for you, and just make somebody else's day better. Because I guarantee if you've made their day better, your day by proxy will be better.
We're going to launch into our final segment, which is what I love about you. And Petch, this is going to come really easy after this episode. I really appreciate that. Number one, you're sharing this information because these are conversations that need to be had. These are thoughts that need to be had, and these are tools that aren't easily accessible to people. Like, yes, they're out there, but they're not like it's not common language, at least not yet. So I really appreciate you for putting that out.
No, thank you.
I also appreciate you because you've gone through a lot and you haven't let it cripple you. You keep seeing the world through an empowering lens. You keep finding in our conversations, there are times where you have to talk me up about seeing things positively. I'm like, no, Petch, this isn't positive. You're like, well, it kind of is. And so you still found a way through your adversity to uplift others and to continue to uplift yourself and go after the things that you really want in life. And I really appreciate that. Finally, man, you've been a great friend to have this year.
No,
like exchanging our voice DMs back and forth, our epic DMs, and then our video chats with me, you, and Emma. It's been really nice.
Oh, we love it.
I look at 2020 and I think, yeah, there's been a lot of shit, and you can't take away all the good that's come with it. And one of those good things has been getting to know you more, Petch. And I really appreciate that.
Oh, I appreciate you too, man.
Tell everybody where we can find this podcast and how we can connect with you further.
So the podcast, episode 1 is being pushed out now to Apple and Gmail, but it's already on Spotify and Podbean. You can find me on the social medias of @the Mourning Brew on Instagram and Twitter, and facebook.com/the Mourning Brew. Or you can get me on my Instagram, like my personal ones, @LeePetcher, again, on Instagram and Twitter, and on Facebook.
Great. And once again, that's Mourning with a U.
Mourning
because don't
with
forget, he's British. He adds U's to everything. Final question for you, Petch. How do you embrace being not perfect?
How do I embrace being not perfect? Jesus, this is a hard question. Do you know what? This is a hard question, and it's one that I struggle with because I want so much to be perfect.
Me and you both.
Like, I look at myself in the mirror and I want the abs, I want the chest, I want the biceps, I want the thighs.
We should work out together.
Mate, we were going to. I look back on my memories and we started connecting over Beachbody.
Yes, we did.
A long time ago.
Yeah.
Yes, we'll definitely do a workout together. I want to be the best guitarist. I want to be able to flip. I want to be able to do all the cool karate moves. I want to be able to be a professional actor. And it grinds me down sometimes when I don't have that. And we had this conversation with Emma recently about how I am so average at everything. But how I manage it is, again, I think of my mum, and I was perfect to my mum. So if not perfect to anybody else, it doesn't matter. I was perfect to her.
That's a great answer. Lee Petch.
Can I, before we go, can I just drop one piece of advice to absolutely everybody listening?
Absolutely.
The thing I don't want to say regret, but it kind of is. It's a regret of mine. When my mum and dad talked, I listened, but I didn't pay attention. And there are stories they told that I wish I could remember now. There are things that I wish I'd have spoke to my mum about regarding her funeral while she was alive. It would have been an awful conversation, and I probably would have put it off. But being in the position I was, having to organize her funeral, I wish I'd have known what she wanted. I wish I would have known what it was like for her losing her parents at such a young age, knowing now what I know losing my mum at such a young age. Like, she must have gone through the same things I did, but she never showed it to me. There are stories that my dad told that I wish I could remember and pass on to my kids when I have them, to friends and family. The advice I would give to absolutely everyone right now listening is speak to your parents, speak to your grandparents, speak to every loved one that you have, and get to know them on every kind of level. Anything that you want to ask them now. Because when they're gone, you will not have that chance ever again. And you will do what I am having to do right now. And I have to go through family members to find out pieces of information that I've either forgotten or I never knew. And that hurts. That hurts. I wish I could just go, I remember that time my mum told me that. Oh, I remember that story my dad told me. So speak about everything.
My friends, my goodness, that was a lot. So I won't leave you with much else. I will just say, really take his words to heart about how you can laugh and cry at the same time. While I don't like the advice, look at the burning house, look at the beautiful butterfly, I do think that we always think it has to be an either or, and it really doesn't. You can find the joy amidst the storm. Hell, for me, it's necessary. I need to find the joy amidst the storm that is 2020. So with whatever you're going through, allow yourself to laugh as you cry. And those days where laughter is hard, that's okay. Friends, please go check out Lee, and if this is your first time listening, connect with me on Instagram at Tony.Rossi. That's Tony with a Y, Rossi with an I. You're also welcome to join us on the Actor Self-Care newsletter over at TonyRossiCoaching.com, as well as our private Facebook group, Actor Problems, the self-care group for actors, over at facebook.com/groups/actor problems. Friends, remember, we can be messy and still get the things that we want. I'll talk to you next week. Hashtag not perfect. Let's go get 'em, actors.
Well, there you go. How great was that? I love his intro and outro music, by the way. I mean, it's so much more upbeat than mine. I want to give a massive shout out and a huge thank you to Tony for asking me to be a part of your podcast. Listening back to that, I want to apologise to all my listeners now about how nervous I sounded and how fast I was talking. Like I said, this was the first time that I'd ever been interviewed on somebody else's podcast, and I had only just released episode 1 of this podcast. So I didn't want to come across as not really knowing what I was talking about. But as Tony so rightly says, throughout all of his podcasts and all of his social media, we are all #NotPerfect. If you're an actor, I recommend that you go over and give his podcast a listen over on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts in. Just type in Actor Problems and it'll come up. And to be fair, even if you're not an actor, I recommend you give his podcasts a listen anyway. Tony is a great life coach and he gives out fantastic advice that will help you in your everyday life regardless of what career you're in. Check out his website, TonyRossiCoaching.com. That's TonyRossi coaching.com, and check him out on Instagram too at Tony.Rossi, Tony.Rossi, and just take in all of his positivity and all of his advice. And what can I say? I'm honoured to call him a friend. So that's it for this episode, and that's it for this year. I hope you've enjoyed listening so far. I aim to be back in January, and I'll be bringing on guests so that they can share their experiences with you all too. Until then, have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I've been Lee Petcher, and this is the Mourning Brew, putting you back in the centre of your morning.